Wales. I'm the Deputy Curator of the Nova Scotia Highlanders Regimental Museum in Amherst, Nova Scotia. I brought in a diary from a First World War Canadian soldier, Frank Harper, originally from Tignish, Prince Edward Island. We are trying to find a living descendant that we can ultimately give this diary back to.
The life of a First World War soldier varied between chaos and monotony. In the hours, days, and weeks between battles, servicemen had to find ways to occupy their time. Some Canadians in the trenches channeled their thoughts by keeping diaries, even though it was strictly forbidden. If caught, they could face court-martial, and for good reason. In enemy hands, a soldier's diary could reveal important details about operational plans, troop size, or armaments. Many of these diaries are now treasured family heirlooms, revealing the first-hand experiences of the men who fought the war. They speak as voices from the battlefield 100 years ago.
Welcome, John, to our show here. You've brought in a rather interesting item and very unique item. It's a diary, but maybe let's look at what that diary actually is.
Well, Mark, it is a First World War diary, and it was written by a private, Frank Harper, and details his time in the trenches in the last roughly 100 days of the war. We received it from a pair of Air Force veterans who were cleaning out their house, and they found this in the attic, and they brought it in and said, find out what you can, and if you can, try and reunite it with a living descendant of Frank Harper's. So I've been trying, and so far no luck.
So the notebook is actually an artifact in itself. It's actually got German on the cover of it. The other interesting point is that it starts in September.
Yes.
So it obviously starts when he's in action. So to me, that almost says that it was literally picked up and started at that point.
That's an excellent point, and it's one that I hadn't really considered. It might have been discarded from a retreating German soldier who never got the chance to use it, because I don't see any German writing in it. And unfortunately, there's no publisher marks on it or anything like that. And so we really don't know where it originally came from or what soldier might have carried it. It ended up in Frank Harper's hands, and he decided to, well, I've got this extra paper, I'm going to start keeping a diary.
So what we're seeing here today is a very, very rare artifact, given the fact that not everyone wrote diaries, but also the military didn't really endorse this sort of thing.
Exactly. For an enlisted man under the rank of second lieutenant to write a diary was actually illegal. It was a court-martial offense because you didn't want any information that could help the enemy falling into enemy hands. Having that information written down was very, very dangerous. Most of the first-hand accounts were written by men after the war. What makes it extremely rare is these diary entries are contemporary. He's writing them down as they are happening, so you can't get more accurate than that. For him to keep that diary, he would have had to probably spirit it away on his uniform somehow. Kind of a brave or somewhat stupid idea of him to do that, but we're glad he did, because very rare to have an actual written document from a frontline soldier from that era.
We're 100 years out from the end of the First World War. Obviously, there's no one living from World War I left, and a tenuous link is this diary, I think, to a time gone by, and that this is a direct link with history, with a World War I soldier sitting in France in 1918 writing his thoughts and comments down as he waged the war.
Frank Harper joined up in mid-1917, July 1917. His first battle was the Battle of Amiens. That was August 8th, 1918. Key battle. The Germans had been driving on the Western Front in France for most of the spring and early summer. By August, the British and Canadian troops stopped them in front of Amiens, and then they counterattacked on the 8th of August. And the German commander, General Ludendorff, said it was the black day of the German army.
Would he have seen a lot of trench action?
Well, he would have been in trenches, yes, but after the Battle of Amiens in August, it was much more fluid. The Germans would retreat and would dig in. The Canadians and the Allies would attack, and then they would dig in, but they weren't digging these complex trench systems that they'd used for the 3 previous years. But as a result, they didn't have the same kind of cover that they had in the trenches, so the casualty rate was very, very high. More Canadian soldiers died in the last 4 months of the war than at any other single period of the war.
We're looking at a fair amount of heavy, intense action that he survived, and he's left us with his own sort of testament to being there.
And I think what's fascinating, not only talking about the battles that he fought in, is what he did after the armistice. I mean, first of all, there's the relief that there's no more fighting, and then there's the okay, now what do we do? And basically let off steam in Brussels, and they're welcomed as liberators by the Belgian people who'd been occupied for so long. And then they move into Germany, where they're actually occupying the left bank of the Rhine in a hostile population and trying to relieve the boredom by doing things to just take their mind off of everything. After all this 4 years of war and intense action, all of a sudden, what do you do? So they did a lot of theatricals and performances and things, and I guess he was really involved in the theater and such. But he did like most soldiers who had been through that carnage and lived to tell about it. They wanted to enjoy being alive. One of the more poignant things is his very last diary entry. He ended up in Kingston, Ontario, and then he said, in Kingston, demobilized, and then he writes, thank God. So he'd made it all the way through. A diary is a very personal thing. It's a personal thought. And Frank Harper was just an ordinary guy in extraordinary times, and was lucky enough for us, he was able to document that. It brings history alive again. It brings Frank alive.
This example you brought today, John, again, I want to thank you for bringing it, is such a great artifact. It's one that any museum would love to have in their collection. It's a great example of a diary that you don't see every day, a World War I Canadian soldier's journey. And I think that's very rare, and even in today's world, to see those.
It is. Well, they're all gone now, so we can't just, call up one and say, hey, what was it like? And so these kind of documents are very, very important to have. It's a valuable document and a prized piece of history, and our museum is lucky to have it as a caretaker right now, but I know the owners of the diary would like to have it reunited with Frank Harper's family in Tignish, PEI, or wherever they may be. And that's why I brought it here from our museum, to hopefully reach out. And he went by Frank, so if anyone knows a Frank Harper in their family, get in touch with the Nova Scotia Highlanders Regimental Museum.
The quest to reunite this diary with the family, I think, is the biggest story that we can take from this today.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Mark. It's been a real pleasure.
Hopefully there's someone that can be reunited with that document, and they can take and share and be interested in that document like we are today.
So if anyone does know of Frank Harper, if they want to get in touch, we're at the Nova Scotia Highlanders Regimental Museum, and the email is nshmuseum@eastlink.ca. Send us an email and get in touch with us, and we would love to find a descendant of Frank Harper's and hopefully reunite that diary with them.